From 1982, when the Bobrum team attempted to start with half a tank, until 2010, F1 cars refueled during races. They demonstrated that driving light so the car could move faster, and then stopping for fuel and new tires was a clever strategy. This added a new dimension to racing because in addition to the usual tire strategy, there was also a fuel strategy. Teams struggled to find the most efficient approach, striving to guess how much fuel their competitors had put into their cars, especially since qualifying required setting your fastest lap with race fuel. Nonetheless, the FIA decided to prohibit refueling beginning with the 2010 season, mainly for two reasons. The first one was cost. Because the cost of transporting, caring for, and storing fuel is very high, refueling required teams to spend more. It is estimated that the cost of refueling was around €1 million per year for each team, something smaller teams were struggling to afford. Another factor was safety. Many accidents occurred during refueling, such as leaks, drivers exiting the pit too soon with the fuel line still attached, or problems inserting it, causing fuel to spill everywhere. Many of these situations also ended with fires. One of the most spectacular and gruesome accidents related to pit refueling happened during the 1994 German Grand Prix. Jos Verstappen was making a pit stop when fuel from the filler hose spilled into the car, causing a massive fire that was luckily extinguished pretty quickly. Thankfully, no one was hurt, owing to the fact that the drivers and mechanics were wearing fireproof suits. Nonetheless, this incident, along with a slew of other refueling mishaps over the years, paved the way for the procedure to eventually be banned from the sport. Since refueling was prohibited in 2010, pit stops have become much faster, as mechanics only need to change the tires. Current pit stops are as fast as 2 to 3 seconds and appear to be a perfect choreography between the mechanics and the car. Pit stops were much slower and more arduous when refueling required inserting the fuel hose, waiting for it to empty, and removing it. Pit stops could last anywhere from 7 to 12 seconds, depending on how much fuel was required. What's interesting is the elimination of refueling from F1 pit stops is the primary reason we have multiple tire compounds today. To maintain the popular strategy element, the rule makers at the time decided to require teams to use two different types of tires during the race. Different tire types perform differently, with softer tires providing more grip but wearing down faster. And degradation, or deg, is still central to the team's strategy today. But if refueling was such a great way to spice up races, is there any chance it will return? We won't count our chickens just yet. As much as many fans and some drivers want it, it's unlikely to happen in the short to medium term. Apart from the cost savings and safety, F1 is not interested in reintroducing refueling. F1 no longer wants to be associated with the excesses, waste, and pollution of previous decades. Instead, the sport is becoming more sustainable and efficient, which means that the fewer resources used, the better. F1 intends to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 by utilizing ultra-efficient logistics, reducing all emissions, and utilizing reusable materials. This can be demonstrated, for example, by examining the evolution of the engines. The V10 and the V8 engines sounded fantastic, but they were far from the goals of F1. The current V6 turbo hybrid engines are the fastest and most efficient in history. Indeed, the possible return of refueling has been debated and ultimately rejected on numerous occasions since 2010. For instance, its return to racing in 2016 to improve the show was debated but ultimately rejected because it had more cons than pros and went against the image that F1 was seeking in the future. In fact, even some teams rejected the proposal, with Claire Williams warning the FIA that such a move is incompatible with the efficient technology that car makers want to promote. The manufacturers have just spent hundreds of millions on these new hybrid power units. They're much more relevant to the road industry and to the energy-efficient conversations that we need to have in society now. To bring back refueling and to make F1 again appear as a gas-guzzling sport just completely steps all over the message. So I'm very anti-refueling. And more recently, in 2021, with the upcoming 2022 regulations clearly aimed at improving the racing spectacle, many drivers and fans alike hoped to see its return. Lewis Hamilton even suggested that refueling could be a solution to both the increasing car weight in Formula One and increasing the stress placed on Pirelli's tires. The cars are getting even heavier. I don't know who's making that decision. It's going to be potentially even worse next year with a heavier car again. It puts a lot of pressure on Pirelli to continue continue to deliver us performance, but also safe tires. Usually in our discussions, we're just always asking, safety is so important, and we're seeing more and more of these incidents. We've got to make sure we work towards not having those in the future. If that means like maybe next year going back to refueling, so the cars are lighter or something like that, so we don't put so much pressure on these tires for safety, that could be a good thing. Alas, that idea was rejected for the same reason as in 2016. It just doesn't match with F1's image. But what do you guys think? Should F1 bring back refueling, even considering the negatives it will bring? Let us know in the comments.